For most of modern history, archaeologists believed that civilization followed a predictable sequence. Human beings learned to farm. Farming created surplus. Surplus led to permanent settlements, and only after that did complex social structures such as temples, priesthoods, and organized religion appear. This theory shaped textbooks, museum exhibits, and documentaries for decades, until a forgotten hill in southeastern Turkey forced historians to rewrite the order in which civilization itself emerged. Archaeologists uncovered Göbekli Tepe. Not a village, not a city, not a farming community, but a massive ceremonial complex built by people who were not even supposed to live in one place. Its stone pillars are older than the pyramids by 7,000 years. Older than Stonehenge by 6,000? Older than agriculture itself. And that single fact quietly breaks the entire timeline of civilization. Because if people could organize on this scale before they could grow food, then the engine of civilization was never survival. Stay with me, because what this place reveals about human history is far stranger and far more important than most of us have ever been told. Gobekli Tepe, meaning Potbelly Hill, lies on a barren ridge overlooking the Harran Plain, a landscape that today seems empty and unremarkable. For centuries, the mound was dismissed as nothing more than a medieval burial ground. And when archaeological surveys were conducted in the region during the 1960s, the site was catalogued and left untouched. It was not until 1994 that German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt recognized that the hill was not natural at all, but an artificial mound concealing something far older and far more significant than anyone had imagined. As excavation began, Schmidt and his team uncovered massive stone pillars arranged in circular enclosures. These were not rough boulders pushed into place by chance. Each pillar was deliberately carved into a distinctive T-shape, many weighing more than 10 tons and standing over 5 meters tall. Their surfaces were decorated with relief carvings of animals such as foxes, boars, vultures, scorpions, and snakes, depicted with a realism and confidence that revealed a sophisticated symbolic language. The pillars were not structural supports. They were stylized human figures, complete with carved arms, hands, belts, and loincloths, positioned to face one another as if engaged in a silent gathering. Radiocarbon dating soon delivered the shock that transformed Göbekli Tepe from a regional curiosity into one of the most important archaeological discoveries of the modern era. The site was constructed around 9,600 BCE, placing it more than 6,000 years before Stonehenge and 7,000 years before the pyramids of Egypt. At this point in human history, according to everything previously believed, societies were composed of small bands of nomadic hunter-gatherers who had not yet developed agriculture, pottery, metal tools, or permanent villages. And yet, Göbekli Tepe existed. The builders of the site had quarried enormous blocks of limestone using only stone tools, transported them uphill to the ridge, carved intricate reliefs into their surfaces, and erected them into monumental enclosures that required precise planning and large-scale cooperation. This level of organization was assumed to be impossible for pre-agricultural societies, yet here it was, preserved beneath 12,000 years of soil. Even more striking was what the excavators did not find. There were no hearths, no cooking pits, no domestic structures, no storage facilities, and no signs of long-term habitation. Göbekli Tepe was not a village, and it was not a residential center. It was a destination, a place to which people traveled from surrounding regions for purposes that were not related to daily survival. The animal carvings provide crucial clues about those purposes. The creatures depicted are not domesticated species associated with food production, but predators, scavengers, and venomous animals that represented danger and power in the ancient world. The repeated presence of vultures is especially significant, as these birds later became symbols of death, transformation, and the journey of the soul in many Near Eastern cultures. Although no direct evidence of ritual burial practices has been found at Göbekli Tepe, the symbolic emphasis on mortality suggests that the site functioned as a ceremonial space where communities confronted existential themes of life, death, and renewal. As archaeologists continued to explore the region, an even more disruptive pattern emerged. The earliest evidence of agriculture in southeastern Anatolia appears only after the main construction phases of Gobekli Tepe. This chronological sequence overturns the long-held assumption that farming enabled monument building. Instead, the data indicate that large-scale ritual gatherings preceded agriculture, and that the need to sustain these gatherings may have driven the domestication of plants and animals. In this light, Gobekli Tepe becomes not a product of civilization, but one of its causes. The most enigmatic chapter in the site's history came at the end of its use. After centuries of activity, the people who built Gobekli Tepe did not allow it to decay naturally. They filled each enclosure deliberately with rubble, animal bones, stone fragments, and soil, sealing the pillars beneath an artificial mound. The absence of erosion layers and the uniformity of the fill material demonstrate that this burial was intentional and systematic. The site was not destroyed by enemies or abandoned in crisis. It was carefully closed, as though its role in human society had reached completion. No structures were built on top of the buried enclosures. Gobekli Tepe disappeared from the landscape, not through neglect, but through design. This raises a profound question about the nature of early human culture. If Gobekli Tepe was not built for shelter, food production, or defense, then it must have been built for meaning. It was a place where shared beliefs were given physical form, where communities gathered not to survive, but to understand themselves. Long before cities, writing, and kings, human beings were already capable of constructing symbolic worlds that reshaped their social reality. Göbekli Tepe demonstrates that the foundations of civilization are not technological, but cognitive. The ability to imagine a shared narrative powerful enough to organize hundreds of people into a coordinated labor force existed before the invention of farming. The site stands as evidence that belief, not agriculture, was the original engine of social complexity. When Gobekli Tepe was sealed, it did not mark the end of an era, but the beginning of a new one. Villages appeared across the region. Crops were domesticated. Permanent settlements replaced seasonal gatherings. The ancient ceremonial center was no longer necessary, and so it was preserved beneath the earth, its stones waiting silently for a future capable of understanding them. In the end, Göbekli Tepe does not reveal a lost super-civilization or forgotten technology. It reveals something far more unsettling and far more human, that long before we learned how to control the environment, we learned how to control meaning. Civilization did not rise from the need to eat. It rose from the need to believe, and that need still shapes the world today.